Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the final ReactJS Girls event. Thank you for choosing to spend your evening with us and celebrate how far this community has come over almost a decade. Please raise your hand if you have attended a ReactJS Girls event before. Ooh, so many familiar faces. Nice to see you back. And please raise your hand if this is your first time ever. Nice, welcome. Cool. Yeah, even if this is our last meetup ever, welcome, and I hope you have a great time tonight. My name is Marta. I'll be your host for this evening, and I am an engineering operations manager at YLD. We have quite a lineup, as we're featuring not 3 but 4 talented engineers tonight, which is great. But before we dive into talks, let's have a few quick intros. To briefly share with you what this community is about. YLD created ReactJS Girls community back in 2016, as they wanted to provide a platform for female engineers and encourage the community to share their knowledge by giving talks, interacting with other software engineers and designers, and all the things related to JavaScript and React. So React may be very niche, but still is a very popular JavaScript framework. And we are definitely lots of developments and challenges that we can learn more about from each other, right? Let's quickly address the elephant in the room. Why are we sunsetting this community? After almost a decade, we've made the collective decision to sunset ReactJS Girls and focus our energy where we can create the most impact. That means evolving how we support wider engineering community. So this doesn't mean we stop supporting female engineers. That's not true at all. So let's be clear. It just means we want to involve everyone, not just female engineers. Everyone. So tonight, let's celebrate. Ask questions in Q&As, meet new people during the break, and definitely join us at the pub after. So quick show of hands. Has anyone here been into our sister community, Design Systems in London? Great, 2 people, that's good. For those who haven't, DSL is a YLD product design community and it's really been taking off. We have the likes of Financial Times, GSK, Figma, Sainsbury's, Just Eat, and more that join us as partners. Almost every event, if not every event in the last 3 years have sold out. And now DSL is even nominated for the best event at 2015 Zero Height Design Systems Awards. And we're not just confined to London. In fact, we took DSL to Paris for the first time with Ledger as a partner, and yeah, that was sold out too. So here's a little ask, if you don't mind. If you enjoyed the ReactJS Girls in the past, we would love your support. And please, can you vote for DSL by scanning this QR code over there and scroll down, and where it says best event finalist, you can just vote for that. You don't need to vote on any category, but if you could vote on that one, that would be amazing. And that would be like a really, really nice support for us. I've done this already. So yeah, also, please do come along to the next one happening on Tuesday, 11th November at GSK's office in Soho. It's going to be great. Okay, so here's our agenda. So meetup begins. We are a little bit late, sorry about that. So we will have our first talk at 6:30, second talk at 7, and then we'll have a 20 minutes break, and then we have the other 2 talks, and then closing and wrapping up, and then we'll go to the pub. But before I hand up the mic to our first speaker, just a few reminders. So code of conduct, keep your language clean, be kind to each other, do not share any appropriate content. I mean, we're all those adults, sorry, but it's worth just to remind. If you got any questions, please don't be shy. Raise your hand and ask questions during the Q&A after each talk. Yeah, and also this QR code, yeah, to rule them all. So if you want to look for tech talks in the past on YouTube, you can just scan the QR code. If you work with us on a project, and by the way, we are hiring JavaScript engineers, not only JavaScript engineers, but a lot of them. So yeah, have a look. Yeah, just scan the QR code and have a look. All right. A word from our organizer, which is YLD. So I am now introducing the amazing Louis Klefscher.
You're setting me up for failure because you said amazing. But hi, everyone. So yeah, my name is Luis. I am head of product design at YLD. See, it's already going amazing. Brilliant. So I am here to interrupt you all by just telling you a little bit about YLD, what we do and who we are. And also why the community is important to us. So YLD is a digital design, product, engineering consultancy. So we have been around for about a decade now. Our goal is ultimately to help clients really kind of build things that have impact, try to get them to understand the importance of product and having a product mind focused and user-centered focused, and trying to understand the importance of having good technology and having technical experts on board. Our product design experts and our technical experts and our change experts, as we like to call them, they work very closely together with our clients, and we don't work in silos. We want to work alongside our clients. We want to really find what it is that they are struggling with, that we can help with, where we can add value and bring that extra sort of je ne sais quoi to the equation. The community for us is very important because we are a company that kind of started out of the Node.js community. So our founders were really, really close to Node.js. And as a company, we always want to be kind of trying to understand what's happening in the industry, what are the technologies that people are talking about. And actually, that's kind of how React came about for us. Is like when that first started around, I say this with confidence as if I know what I'm talking about, around 2013, something like that. For us, we kind of we jumped on this. We had a couple of conferences. Actually, I want to ask, did anyone ever go to the ReactJS Girl conference? Yes, that is fantastic. We even had React Fest as well. So for us, this always been really, really important. And obviously, we also do Design System London, as Martha was mentioning, and so very kindly plugging for the awards. So as a company, as I said, for us, what is important is that we want to kind of try to find how people with expertise can be more than just someone who move pixels around or just kind of add lines of code. Because a lot of engineers, as you all know, and designers are very smart people and they have ideas. So when we join a team or we join a company, we want individuals to be able to kind of have a chance to be empowered and to actually influence what's happening in that kind of organization in their team. So with that, if you have any questions regarding YLD, if you want to partner with YLD, if you want to partner with us on events, or if you potentially are looking for your next challenge, feel free at any point to come and grab me, or anyone in a YLD t-shirt, which I'm looking around and realizing that it's probably just me. So yeah, I'll be around if you want to have a chat. And then the QR code, check us out. All the information that you need will be there. Now, let's get on with the evening. Enjoy the talks. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Luis. Now, a word from our sponsor, Lee Walker.
Good evening, everybody. My name's Lee Walker. I am the engineering lead for a platform in BNY called Execution Services, which looks after all the trading, post-trade activities for fixed income, FX, equities, and our buy-side trading function, including the back and middle office. So it's a pleasure to be the sponsor of this event. Absolutely thrilled to have you here. Before you get into the actual event, I'm just going to give you a little bit of background about BNY and then tell you about some safety notices about being in the building. So, a bit of background about BNY. First of all, we were founded by Alexander Hamilton in 1784. Some of you will have probably seen the musical. It is the same Hamilton. We are the backbone of financial services. We're not a retail bank. You won't see us on the high street. We help our clients by marrying together deep domain expertise with cutting-edge technology. Our platforms touch 20% of all the globe's investable assets, and we have 55 trillion under our protection in custody. We are the world's #1 custodian bank. Our client list is enormous and the envy of most of the people in the financial services. We have 92% of the Fortune 100 companies doing business with us. We have 95% of the top 100 banks in the globe doing business with us. And we also have 94% of the top 100 investment managers all doing business with BNY. So those stats are probably a little bit surprising, because when you hear BNY, you might, first of all, a couple of years ago, you might have gone, never heard of BNY, but your middle and back office and your trading functions, if you work for a bank, will definitely know us. Your pension providers will definitely know us. Any kind of ISA that you have with a fund, the companies that hold that fund will definitely know us. And I think that a couple of years ago, people didn't necessarily think of us as being at the forefront of modern technology, hosting React events, which are fantastic, and AI. We're a 240-year-old bank. But behind the scenes, we have 11,000 engineers working on 2,000 applications with 70,000 servers, all powering the platforms and offerings and businesses that we deliver to our clients day in, day out. And as a GSIFI, we're a globally significant financial institution, meaning that we have to make sure that the rails of the financial world that run through our doors are constantly available for our clients and other institutions. Within our tech stack, we're also aggressively modernizing as well. So cloud native architecture, microservices, APIs, and of course, really cool front ends written in React.js. So if they're the kind of areas that are interested you, BNY is an enormous kind of playground for delivering functionality to our clients and to our internal teams to do things better, particularly through front ends, which is a big focus. However, I think that AI is where it gets really interesting. So at BNY, we've built our own AI platform. It's called Eliza, which is named after Hamilton's wife. We were the first bank to buy a NVIDIA SuperPod, and we've invested very heavily in Copilot, Windsurf for our engineers to speed up their development and essentially have more output from the same number of people, which is really exciting. We believe that AI is for everyone, everywhere, and for everything. And that's coming from the top of house. And that means that essentially 98% of all of our employees have been trained on Eliza. 20,000 of our employees have created their own AI agent, and 67% of those weren't even in engineering, they're outside of engineering. And we're also accelerating our adoption of agentic AI. So we have 100 digital employees at the minute, growing all the time, and they do things from fixing broken payments to remediating cyber vulnerabilities in our code stack. We also have about 100 plus solutions which use AI in our production environment as well. So the AI focus is enormous. So yes, BNY is a 240-year-old institution, but from the inside, we look like a massive engineering shop tackling the most interesting and difficult problems in finance. So that's BNY in a bit of a nutshell. Over to you, Roxana. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much, Lee. And now we're going to jump on the first talk, which our first speaker will be Roxanne with how vanilla extract CSS can improve performance on big production applications.
Right. So we're finally here. We've been waiting for a long time to get this sorted and set up. So welcome. I'm Roxana. I'm a graduate software engineer at BNY. I'm in my second year of the graduate scheme. I work in market engineering. And today I want to talk to you about vanilla extract CSS and how we can improve performance on big production application. Before we get right into it, I want to tell you a little bit about my background. So I've started in engineering in 2021 when I decided to go at university to study for computer science. And before I was a recruiter and I worked in recruitment for about 7 years, recruitment construction. So yeah, I'm here now. On the agenda for today, I'm going to talk a little bit about the motivation behind this talk, what vanilla extract is, how it can be implemented in your projects, what's the developer experience like, how to use it with themes and tokens, a short comparison between vanilla extract and Emotion.js, another styling library, and closing remarks. So as every junior developer out there, I want to upskill. I want to broaden my knowledge. I want to learn a little bit more about front end, about styling. And this is one of the reasons why I wanted to do this talk. While I was in my first year at BNY, I heard my more senior developers talking about how styling can impact performance on production application. And I thought I want to do a little bit of research on that and find out more. So while I was at one of meetups similar to this one, I met another developer that was telling me about vanilla extract CSS. So I started looking into that. And another thing is that I really like to challenge myself, and you can tell my voice is shaking. So I wanted to do my first public talk, and here I am. Right, so vanilla extract CSS came about in 2021 and is a community-driven library, has over 10K stars on GitHub. It's a framework-agnostic CSS in TypeScript styling library. One of the valuable points they make is that they build a style sheet at build time and not at runtime as the other styling libraries out there. Is predictable and modular because of the type safety, and you also get auto-completion in your ID when you're using it. When it comes to implementing in your projects, it's relatively easy and straightforward. You do need to have a bundler set up that works with CSS imports. For this example, I chose Vite with React. They offer support for all of the newest bundlers like ESBuild, Webpack, Gatsby, and so on. You can find everything about this on their documentation. So to install it, you install the vanilla extract CSS package and the Vite plugin package from NPM in this case. And then in your Vite configuration file, you need to import the vanilla extract plugin, and you need to make sure that you add the plugin to the plugins array. And after that, you're pretty much ready to start writing styles. The style sheet with vanilla extract needs to end with an extension .css.ts, so just for the bundler to know to pick it up when it's building. Okay, so this is pretty much how styling a button looks like in vanilla extract. What you see on the screen, you first need to import the style function from the package vanilla extract CSS. And then you can start writing your styles. In this case, we are creating a variable called addButton, and we are exporting that. And then we're calling the style function with an object that represents your styles. What's a little bit different here from normal CSS is that you need to write your CSS properties as camel case and not kebab case. And also you have your pseudo classes that you will write them in the same object as in the same object for that particular element that you want to style. And then when you want to use them in your component, you're just adding, you can either import them all as styles from your style sheet, so then import everything in the component file, or you can import them one by one. And then you can obviously have more than just one style per style sheet. If you have more divs or paragraphs or section they need to style, you can create everything that's related to that component in that style sheet. And then with the help of TypeScript, when you start typing the name of the styles, you can get auto-completion and it can tell you exactly what styles you have available for you. Also, another benefit is that you can create variants for your elements. So for example, on the left-hand side, you can see we can create a base style for a button. And then with the composition that the Vanilla Extract offers, you can call again the style function with an array this time. And the first element is the base button, the base style for the button. And then the second element is an object that will, with the extra styles they want to add to that variant. So in that case, for primary, you maybe have a different color. For danger, you have a different color for your button. And then when you import them in your style sheet, the same, and then you just interpolate the class names into the class name of the element. In this case, it's class name for the button because it's React. Also, Vanilla Extract offers the style variants API, which is maybe a little bit cleaner and more elegant way of creating variants for the button. This time you just call the style variants function, and then you just give it the object with the variants that you want to create for your style. And then you just call them as you would do with the previous style, which with the normal styles in your component. Okay, so themes and tokens. Now, Vanilla Extract has what's called create theme and create theme contract. It's two functions and the create global theme as well. So 3 functions that I'm going to be talking about today. Those are great to help large teams to make sure that they keep on certain contract for their tokens and for the design system, for example. And because it's easy to just add extra themes and then you'll end up with a lot of different colors for the same button or for the same paragraph. So an example in here, with a create theme contract, you're creating like a blueprint of your tokens. So on the first line, we have the export const vars. So we're creating a variable called vars, and then in there we are calling the create theme contract. And what we're doing there, we're just setting up what tokens we want to apply to our design system, for example, to our themes. And this doesn't create any variables or any CSS at the beginning. It just creates the contract. And like this, TypeScript knows what tokens you will have to implement in your themes when you're calling your create theme function, which you see down there. So for example, for the light theme, you call the create theme with the vars, with the variables that you've just created. So you give it the contract that this is what my theme needs to look like, and then you just override you add values to the tokens. And then on the other side, on the right side, is just an example how you would call how you would toggle between light and dark theme in a React app. Also, with the help of TypeScript and your ID, if you forget to add a token or you add an extra token, you get a squiggly line saying that you made an error, and you have a message with what the error is about, so then you can go back and rectify. Okay, so to compare Vanilla Extract with Emotion in JS, which is another styling library that injects the styling at runtime, I've created 2 identical React application. One I styled with Vanilla Extract CSS, and the other one with Emotion in JS. I did a clean build on both of them because I wanted to see what the packages look like, what's the size on both. So we can see, oh, I can have my cursor. Okay, so we can see in here on Vanilla Extract that we have just 40 modules transformed. The size of the CSS is relatively small. The size of JS bundle is also small. And then the time is 1.68 seconds. Of course, this is a relatively small project, but we can compare it with Emotion in JS. And we can already see there's difference in the time that took to build, and there's a difference in the size bundle of the JS. And then just a little bit more metrics in here. Something I was interested to look into was the interaction to next paint, just because this makes faster. It's perceived faster when it's lower. It's perceived faster by the users when it's lower. So we can see the vanilla extract is relatively lower than emotion in JS. Yeah, so those are the metrics as the other page. So just in conclusion, using vanilla extract CSS can give you type-safe theming, zero runtime cost. All the style sheets are created at build time. It doesn't bloat your CJS bundle, and it feels familiar. It's relatively easy to pick up. They have great documentation as well, and it's easy to work with on large application and on large design systems. I have in here resources if you're interested to check out their documentation and their GitHub repository. I'll leave that in for a second. Yeah, that's all from me. Thank you. Can connect on LinkedIn if you want. And if you're interested about the projects, there are the two QR codes for the two identical projects. Great. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you very much for your amazing talk. Any questions?
So if this is runs at build time, how does it like if your app is bigger, how does your build time grow?
So yeah, that would be one of the downsides of vanilla extract CSS, as your project will grow, your build time will grow as well. But this is something that the developer will need to deal with, because when it comes to the runtime, it's already better. The user will see a huge performance boost on their application. But yeah, it might grow a little bit, your build times. You might need to wait a bit, have a coffee in the meantime.
I am a plant. What was the difference with tree shaking?
Yeah, that's a great question. So because all the styles are built at compile time, so if you have styles that are not used in your project, they're not going to be imported. They're not going to be built. So then you're just going to have to use the styles that are built. So know that code in there.
So less code. Yeah.
Thank you. The other. You sure? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Cool. Let's go with Sophie with Technical Migration Toolkit.
Thank you very much. I'm really excited to be here, and I'm really sad that it's the last one. I've been coming since 2017, I think, and ReactJS Girls gave me my first ever speaking opportunity at React Fest in 2018. And yeah, I've been doing it ever since, so I'm really grateful to this meetup. Right, I can't see my notes. That's a brilliant start. Okay, so migrations. Oh, okay. My face is on the screen. Is there a way we can move my face off the screen? Sorry. Where is it coming from? Oh,
So it's from there.
Okay, that's gonna. Oh, it's gone. Okay, so anytime we're moving a system from one software language to another, or doing some kind of upgrade that involves a lot of changes, that is a migration. And when you're a software developer, as most of us in this room are, migrations are unfortunately a fact of life. And there's always something around the corner, whether it's some new technology or just an upgrade that needs doing. And it's very easy to start out thinking that it's going to be a straight line to the end, but everything is going to be better right away. But in reality, of course, it's often a lot more like this. So an uphill path full of twists and turns and surprises, unforeseen hiccups and bends in the road, interruptions that take away your focus, what seems like a relatively short distance that actually takes a lot longer to cover than you might think. So I'm going to share some tips for your next technical migration, and also some things to think about whether you should actually be going down this road at all. My name's Sophie. I'm a staff engineer at Monzo, which is also a bank based in London. I have a website where I occasionally write about tech, mostly just about gardening. And you can find me in various places around the internet. And Monzo is the bank that lives on your phone. We're growing fast in the US and moving into the EU as well. And as an app-based bank, our main product is just that, right? It's a phone app. But we do have web things as well. This is Monzo.com. Like many companies, we have a website. So we've also got a web banking app for our business customers. And we also have internal tooling. And that's where I work. So this is our customer service app. It is a massive React app. It's called BizOps. Anything like chat, email, and calls, back office tasks, anything we need to serve our customers. And we migrated our web properties from Facebook's type system Flow to TypeScript relatively recently. It took a really long time. And this is actually the sticker that we got made after we finished. I do have some with me if anyone else has felt this pain. It took us just over 2 years, I think, 2 to 3 years. But we did it. And what I'm sharing with you today is the lessons that I learned from the migration. But needless to say, migrations are not without challenge, especially in an organization of our size. So it can seem really intimidating when you're right at the beginning and you feel like you've got this massive job ahead of you. Like, where do you even start? Well, in our case, we started small. So a couple of our engineers decided they'd had enough and they were just going to have a go and see what they could find on GitHub. They found a script that someone else had uploaded to migrate Flow to TypeScript. And they decided to see if they could migrate one of our packages in our monorepo. And when they migrated that, they wanted to see if they could get it building with everything else. So the goal is to understand what this migration is going to look like for your team. See what other people have done. So you might be able to use their scripts and learn from their experiences. So Flow to TypeScript is a very well-trodden path at this point. And a while after we started, Stripe also were doing the same thing, and they open sourced their migration tooling. So with any technical migration like this, it's always worth seeing what other people have been up to see if you can save yourself some time. So time box the exploration effort as well. Do a proof of concept and see how much you can learn from it. And document everything right from the start as well. And that includes the experimentation, right? Because for every new engineer you're going to that joins your team, you're going to need to get them up to speed with what you're doing and why. And also it's really helpful to have a decision log of everything that you chose to do along the way, so that in 6 months' time, if you ask yourself, what was I thinking? You've got it in paper. But your documentation should cover every aspect of the migration, the past, present, and future. So you should treat it like a project because, of course, all of your projects are meticulously documented, I'm sure. But ultimately, you need to make it really easy for somebody with no context to understand, what are you doing? How do I get involved? Who should I speak to if I have any questions? So once you've decided to go ahead with the migration, who should actually do the work? Should you have one team working on the migration, or should you collaborate across teams? Well, in an ideal world, you'd have one team who laser focus on the migration and nothing else, because for one thing, this vastly reduces the risk of work not getting done. If you do share the migration among a lot of teams, that means you don't need to dedicate a team just to the migration, but ultimately it does take longer, because ultimately you're at the mercy of other teams' planning cycles, and they're always going to have their own goals and their own things they need to do. So this work is never going to take priority. And the bigger your organization gets, the more complicated this becomes. And if you're driving the migration centrally, you can just do the work for them. So in our case, we weren't able to do it in one central team. So we distributed the work across all the teams that had web engineers. And how should you tackle the work itself? Should you do it all at once, or should you go bit by bit? When you're doing the work shared across multiple teams like we were, you don't have a choice here, right? You have to do it bit by bit. But if you do have the luxury of a dedicated team, you have a choice here. Things like major version upgrades of React do need to be done in one go, because you can't have more than one version running in the same app. If you're replatforming on like a new static site generator, or you're fiddling around with some new build tooling, you probably do want to do it all at once so you don't have multiple build steps. And if you've got a small code base, the risk is relatively low. But if you have a large code base like us, a big bang migration is quicker, maybe, but it is inherently riskier. And if there's an incident, it'll make it a lot easier to see what's gone wrong and fix it when you've only migrated a little bit at a time, right? You can just roll back the new bit and fix it. Much safer approach. But the flip side of doing it incrementally is you have to be very disciplined and make sure that you actually keep going. It can be very challenging to maintain enthusiasm and pace, as we discovered. And there really is a real risk here that you go bit by bit and something else comes up to distract you and you put it on pause only to never finish. I really can't overstate the importance of tooling in a migration. It makes everything so much faster. So, and a little bit of time investment at the start will really speed your team up so much. So, first of all, as I said, like see what scripts are available on the internet. There are libraries and frameworks. If you're upgrading them, often they provide code mods and tooling to do a lot of the heavy lifting for you. Write scripts to automate things. So, code mods are scripts that you can run over your code base that like basically automate changes for you. And actually large language models like Claude and Copilot are really, really good at generating those kind of things. And but do remember to check the output carefully, obviously. And you can use things like static checks like ESLint to enforce the new style while you're migrating over, if you're doing it gradually, to make sure that people don't add more of the old stuff. So make it really, really easy to do the right thing. So in our case, we had a TypeScript migration script that would kind of just take in the old flow code and spit out the new TypeScript code along with flow types for the libraries that hadn't been migrated yet. So especially with an incremental migration like this, it became really important to actually measure our progress so that we could obviously keep morale up and see how close we were or not to actually finishing. I put together a dashboard that showed the number of flow packages in the repo versus the number of TypeScript packages, and it was an exciting day when those lines finally crossed over. I do leave the house, I promise. And I also wrote a script that was based on a script that told us which packages were ready to migrate, which meant that all their dependencies had already been migrated to TypeScript. And this script will give me the percentage of files that had been migrated in the repository. And I posted it on Slack every month. And towards the end, I was posting it every day until it got to 99%. It never got to 100 because I realized that it was counting all the config files at the root of the repository. So staff engineer. So along with that measurement, you also need milestones, which are checkpoints along the way that indicate significant achievements in your migration. And setting milestones, again, not only made us feel like we were getting somewhere, but it also helped us communicate our progress to stakeholders in terms that they could easily understand. So the first app we migrated was a milestone, migrating our business banking web app was another one, and migrating BizOps, the biggest app by far in the repository, was the final one. And if you're not setting milestones like these for project, I really, really recommend it because it really helps to break down a massive project into much more easily digestible chunks. We didn't have to get explicit buy-in from leadership for quite a long time because at Monzo there is this certain expectation that there is just maintenance and web improvement work that happens kind of side of desk alongside squad work. And for a while, it was just a small group of web engineers doing bits here and there. Getting buy-in became really important later in the project. Once we'd proven the potential value, it was obvious that things were progressing really slowly and we wouldn't hit our target deadline. And without the backing of senior stakeholders, there was a risk that the work would never be considered important enough to actually finish. And so my engineering director was a really great support. So with his backing, other less technical leaders in the organization were much more likely to just let us get on with it. And it really helps if you know what stakeholders care most about. Some of them will be really focused on risk. So what happens if you don't do this migration? Others might be more focused on cost or developer velocity. So is this old technology holding you back from scaling? Is it stopping you from shipping things quickly? And know who you're pitching to and tailor your argument. And stakeholders will also want to know when you'll see the benefits from all of this hard work. And with some migrations, it really is 0 to 1. You're not going to see the value until it's completely done. But for much of the TypeScript stuff, even though it kind of was 0 to 1 because ultimately we couldn't use Next.js's shiny new compiler if we were still using Babel, which we needed to transpile flow. So we can migrate 99% of the packages, but as long as there was any flow code left, we'd still be using the old compiler. But there was actually a small amount of incremental value that we found because all the new stuff we were building was in TypeScript. And that meant that when we were working on those bits, our IDEs ran a lot faster and we were actually able to upgrade some of the libraries a lot quicker than we thought we would. In my opinion, the greatest threat to any migration is actually not its complexity, but it's changing organizational priorities that leave you unable to finish. So make sure that the people in charge understand the risks of not completing the migration, because it's very easy to think that you can just pause it and carry on with your lives. But in some cases, you'll end up in a worse position than you were when you started. So I'm contractually obliged to include this XKCD comic about standards here. The moral of the story is that you might introduce one new technology that's going to replace everything. But if you don't finish, it's just going to be one more technology in your code base. When there are 5 different ways of doing the same thing in your code base, how is an engineer supposed to know which one is the right one? And if someone is paged for an incident, and this particular part of your website uses some obscure new data fetching library when everything uses something else, what are they supposed to do? And think about the end user as well. Like, as web developers, we are building for users, for people. And by adding a new library, are you increasing the bundle size that the user has to download at the other end? You're also much more likely to get buy-in for the migration if you've proven you've given a lot of thought to the safety of the migration, because so things like minimizing disruption to operations, not inconveniencing people too much, and also having an escape plan if things go wrong. Because all migrations come with risk, the important thing is how you deal with that risk and prepare yourself for what can go wrong. Incidents happen. They are an inevitable consequence of doing things and moving forward. And if you're not having incidents, you're not shipping enough code. But accept that you probably will have incidents when you migrate things. That's fine. The important thing is that you can recover from them quickly and safely and learn from them so it doesn't happen again. So we almost certainly had some bugs that came out of migrating some of our components to TypeScript, but we were able to quickly roll them back, fix them, and move forward again. And we learned from them and we improved our tooling. But just like growing out a bad haircut, there's probably going to be a really awkward in-between phase where you'll have the old and the new technologies alongside each other. You'll have to maintain and make changes to both of them. You might have some temporary slowdowns in processes, such as additional build steps. So we did have both the Flow and TypeScript compilers running alongside each other for a while. It did add a few seconds onto every build, which wasn't so bad in the grand scheme of things. But keep on going, and eventually you'll get to the point where you can remove the old thing. And it's a good day. And when you do finish, make sure you celebrate it. So it's not an easy task doing a migration, and it can take a really long time, as it certainly did in our case. But make sure you recognize everyone who contributed and saw it through with you. So in our case, I like to publicly embarrass people for doing good things. So I posted a message in a public forum. I posted this in our company-wide engineering announcements channel. So make sure engineering leadership know what everyone's achieved. We got stickers made. Everyone loves a sticker to show they took part in something. Got cupcakes made with a TypeScript logo on. That was a good day. And those were some tips for tackling a technical migration. Next time a migration opportunity presents itself, here are some things to think about before you take the leap. This should always be the first question that you ask yourself when a migration opportunity comes up. What happens if you do nothing? Do you even need to do this migration at all? So as time goes on, if you don't do this migration, will you be in the same place as you are now, or will you be in the worst place? Because if you'll be in a worse place, that's a sign that you should probably do something. But if you'll be in the same place, I encourage you to think long and hard about the benefits that you're expecting. Because the decision to introduce a new technology needs to be very well considered. You need to have a really clear idea of the benefits that you're expecting, because all benefits are relative to the effort required to actually do the migration. And is there a point at which the effort outweighs the value? And this gets more of an issue the larger your code base gets and the more complex your organization is. And remember that technology isn't free once you've implemented it. There's maintenance to think about as well. Who's going to look after the new technology? And this includes staying on top of vulnerabilities, being on call if that's relevant for your team, major version upgrades, debugging when things go wrong. There's a reason my team own a GraphQL server. We should not own a GraphQL server, but we implemented a GraphQL server. So make sure you don't just expect that you can just hand it over to an infrastructure or platform team and expect them to magically know how to look after it. If you started a brand new project today and you chose this cool new technology to build your code base in, you know you're going to be going through exactly the same thing a few years down the line, because there are always going to be new technologies and things never keep still in this industry, which is awesome. But it also means it always feels like there's new things coming up that you have to keep on top of. You don't have to do a migration every time something new comes out, so think very carefully about your motivations. There's a big difference between picking a new technology because it seems cool and picking a new tool because it's genuinely going to be better. So lots of us have built workarounds and complex functionality that we've kind of think, oh, it's a bit rubbish, but there's nothing else out there. And then something else comes along that does the thing you want it to. And great, it makes a lot of sense to migrate to that. And things become end of life as well. So we might put off major version upgrades of things because we're intimidated by the amount of work that's required to actually upgrade them. But it becomes a necessity at the point at which the library is not going to be updated anymore, and you're at risk of things like security vulnerabilities and it's not being patched. And things that seem like a really good idea at the time might end up being a poor decision. And in our case, Flow was one of those decisions. It didn't work out for us. We made a choice in the past. It turned out to have not have been the right one. We weren't the only ones to have made this decision. And at the time, it made a lot of sense. These things happen. As well as a lot of good reasons, there are some not so good reasons to do a migration as well. Sometimes companies migrate to new technologies because it just seems like that's what the industry is doing now. Don't assume that just because a well-respected tech company is using a particular technology that you should too. Now, I know we're at a React meetup, but I'm going to say when everyone was adopting React, I wonder how many of them stopped to think about whether they really needed a framework that was built for a Facebook scale application. We use it internally at Monzo for our customer service application, but that is really massive and complex, and it has a lot of contributors. And I do think it's a very good use case, but for a static page, how much of it is just excess JavaScript that you're sending down the wire? Maybe you joined a new company, or you come onto a new project where they're using a tool or a technology that you're not familiar with or you don't like. I was given some good advice by my boss at a new company once when I said I didn't like a library that they'd chosen. He said, think about whether it's actually worse or just different from what you're used to. And that's really good advice. He said, kind of live with it for a few weeks, a few months even, kind of see how you get on with it, and then reevaluate and decide whether it is actually worse. In my case, I do think I was right and it was worse, but the principle is a very good one. So is it actually worse, or are you just not used to it? And by not opening your mind to different technologies from the ones you've used, are you holding yourself and your work back? And in my case, I didn't migrate away from the new technology because it just didn't make sense as well. Like, does it make sense for your company to move to this new technology, even if it is so much better? Do you have a good plan for how you're going to get there? And maybe there's a new language you think is cool, or you've been playing with in your spare time, and you wish you could use it all the time. Or maybe there's massive hype around new technology, and it seems like it'd be good for some reason or another. There are many new libraries and frameworks and languages out there, and it's exhausting trying to keep up. And many of these will come and go before you've even had a chance to try them out. And it's very important to consider whether a new technology is actually better than what you've got now. There's nothing wrong with boring. Boring works. Boring is tried and tested, and boring is easier to maintain. This is an excerpt from an essay called Choose Boring Technology by Dan McKinley. You can read it at boringtechnology.club, and I love it, and you should definitely read it. He says, boring should not be conflated with bad. There is technology out there that is both boring and bad, and you should not use any of that. But there are many choices of technology that are boring and good, or at least good enough. MySQL is boring. Postgres is boring. PHP is boring. Python is boring. Memcached is boring. Cron is boring. And these technologies, boring though they are reliable, and people look after them. People know how to use them. There's a lot of documentation. They're well maintained. Sure, they're not new and exciting, but they will work, and they'll do what you need them to do. I hope these lessons will give you a framework to tackle your next migration. And remember, if you do a migration, do it wisely, and don't be afraid to be boring. And maybe you don't even need to do it at all. Thank you very much.
You mentioned you did a lot of automation during this migration. I'm just curious what kind of things you automated to make your lives better.
Sure. So this was a few years ago. This was before kind of LLMs really were a thing. So it probably would have looked quite different if we'd done it today, actually. But the first thing we did was use the TypeScript flow to TypeScript script that we'd kind of got found on GitHub, and we turned that into our migration tooling. So we had like a Yarn, we use Yarn as a package manager. So we had a Yarn script to just migrate a package. So we could migrate entire packages in our monorepo, or even just directories in an app. So we had it all building together. So it was a lot of leaning on things like code mods and type generation tooling as well. It's a while back now. I think to be honest, that was about it. I think there's a lot more we could have done. Like we had a problem with people copying and pasting old Flow code to create new packages while we were trying to migrate off Flow. So we built a new package generator that would just generate a new package with everything you needed that was all in TypeScript. You want to make it really easy for people to do the right thing, basically. And the path of least resistance needed to be TypeScript. And it worked, though, because I think people were just glad they didn't have to copy and paste anymore.
Thank you.
It sounds like you spent a ton on this migration. It was like 2 years and a whole team for that 2 years. That must have cost quite a lot. When making sort of the business case for that investment in the migration, what was some of like the key what moved the needle in terms of making this a good investment? First, like I'm sure it wasn't design experience. Was it something like customer focused or?
So to be clear, it wasn't a one team for 2 years.
Okay.
It would be quite embarrassing if it was one team that took 2 years. But it was a side of desk project for many of us for a couple of years. So we were kind of doing bits on an afternoon. It was a few web engineers, then it was like, okay, everyone, all the web engineers, you've got to do this as a side of desk project. And then eventually it got to the point where it was going really slowly and I realized, okay, we might actually not finish this. And so that's when I went to the Eng director and I said, we need to make this a mandate. And so I ticketed up the remainder of the projects and basically just handed it out to teams with web engineers, and it worked with the EMs and tech leads to say, like, you need to bring this into your sprints. I think the arguments I made were basically that, well, for one thing, it would slow our processes down if we didn't finish. Like many of us will have seen the results of having half-finished migrations in the code base. Like it adds confusion, it makes it very difficult to upgrade libraries. I think that was the biggest risk for us because we were on an old version of Apollo client, and the new one didn't have any flow types. And so if we couldn't upgrade it, it meant that we were at risk of security vulnerabilities. And ultimately, that's the biggest risk.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Were there cases where you feel that the migration, especially the automated migration tooling, sort of ended up generating awkward code because things did not map over nicely? And if so, which language constructs were the worst offenders? And second question, do you still see today that some code used to be Flow?
I mean, that's interesting. I still find occasional Flow ignore comments in there, and I'm like, oh, someone didn't check that over very carefully. I think so. The tooling was good to a point. I think we had to go over and fix there were always errors in the output. And at one point, we actually thought, should we just, instead of finishing the migration, we could just strip out Flow and have vanilla JavaScript for a lot of these older files. And then we realized to be able to do that, we'd have to run a code mod to remove all the Flow and then check it over for errors. And if we're doing that, we might as well just migrate it to TypeScript. So yeah, we definitely had a lot of any's come out, and we don't really like any's. I think there were a few that got through the net when we were really pushing for the end, but yeah, we try not to use any's. So some of them were definitely needed a manual pass, and you end up with, there's some slightly weird syntax with Flow with kind of read-only objects that didn't always translate so well into TypeScript. But yeah, so every time we migrated using the script, you'd have to give it a manual go over to fix the errors. And I wonder if that's something that LLMs could have helped with quite well, actually, if we'd had them.
Near the end, when you had to pass it over to all those other teams, how did you make sure that all of the teams were contributing a similar quality of types?
So it was all web engineers doing it. And we have a high level of trust. And we also have a good relationship in the web discipline, and we had monthly catch-ups as well. And also, I think, we don't want to work in a poor quality code base as well. I think the difference was remarkable actually when we migrated to TypeScript. Like weirdly, we found quite a lot of actual missing props and parameters that Flow had just kind of blissfully ignored, which was slightly concerning. So I think doing the migration and like the code that it produced at the end, you'd always have to go through it to fix some errors, and you could ignore some any's and stuff like that if you wanted, but ultimately it's another web engineer who's going to be reviewing that code, and I think a lot of us had a vested interest to do it right. That's not to say it was all perfect, it definitely wasn't, but I think I think largely it came out a lot better than it went in, which is really nice.
Would you say that the change has improved developer productivity and your ability to retain and attract talent?
I could ask someone who's joined us 3 months ago. No, okay, yeah. No, I think for one thing, it definitely. I think the productivity increase is probably. I mean, I haven't measured it, but I think there was one because, for one thing, the Flow server crashed constantly, and TypeScript. I like VS. We all use VS Code, and it's built in TypeScript for TypeScript, and it was amazing to start using that after having Flow because it just knew what you wanted, and all the auto suggestions were amazing. The build was actually a bit faster in both Dev and CI, which was really, really nice. Ultimately, like, developer productivity wasn't the main kind of catalyst for the migration. It was being able to upgrade those libraries and being kind of not vulnerable. But I think also TypeScript is so universal now. For many people, it's almost the default when you're starting a JavaScript project or even a Node project. So I think it probably does help our case a little bit with hiring. Yeah.
I was wondering, how did your test coverage look like while migrating? Because obviously it's a bit tricky because like you can't have 100% test coverage, and it's always a pain when you migrate something and something is not tested, and then the questions arises and the bugs. Like, how do you deal with that? And like, what was sort of like, maybe you can give like percentage. Thank you.
Yes. So I think in certain areas of our internal tooling, our test coverage could be a bit better. We don't aim for 100%. I don't necessarily think 100% test coverage is always the best thing to aim for. Like, you want to aim for quality, not quantity of tests. And we have end-to-end tests that test actual kind of interaction. We use Playwright for actual interaction with the system, which I think is a really great way of making sure that the kind of critical paths are covered. But there were actually some points where we'd migrate something to TypeScript and it was built by some faraway team, and we'd be like, okay, but how do we actually test this in staging? So there was a lot of tracking down people and asking how to generate simulated data and things like that. But yeah, some people added more tests in, but in some cases it was actually quite a lot of manual testing, which I think is not a great place to be. So if you do have a good test coverage, then you migrate. If those are written in TypeScript, then you can migrate those as well. And ultimately the functionality should stay the same because TypeScript is ultimately a like kind of compiled time thing. So
cool. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for your talk.
Thank you very much.
Okay, all right, everyone. Shall we prepare for the next talks?
Hi.
Okay, let's welcome Tay with the talk from Enzyme to React Testing Library, Lessons in Driving and Large-Scale Test Migration.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tay Bencardino, and today I want to bring to you this issue we have in the past when I have to do a migration between from Enzyme to React Test Library, and some lessons. So I'm a software engineer in Rightmove. I worked there for 3 years now, and I'm also a mentor in the Geek Girls Portugal, and I'm co-organizer at Makers Alumni Hub. Yes, thank you. Okay, better. You can see me now. Cool. So I want to show you what happened when I joined Rightmove, what I found there, and why Enzyme become deprecated. So is a library for testing. Then the difference between Enzyme and React Test Library, the roadmap, which was the plan, securing by end implementation, the knowledge transfer, enforcement, automation, and some takeaways. I also have some documentation to share with you that I used during the process. And cool. So this is what I found out on day one. There was more than 1,000 test files using Enzyme. And some of them was actually Frankenstein. We have half Enzyme, half React Test Library. And this library I never saw before. because when I learned how to code, it was already React.js library, and I learned how to code with React 18, and this was React 16. So okay, there's need an upgrade as well. So the main difference between Enzyme and React.js library. So Enzyme is a library that came from created by Airbnb, and they focus on implementation details. So they want to check if the code you wrote actually work, not the user behavior like in React.js library created by Ken Dot. So React.js library is more accessibility focused. They care about what the users see in the web page, and the Enzyme is gonna check props in some components, and they use CSS selectors to find some element. But the difference in practice is, let's say we have a button. So this button have 3 props: the click, disable, class name, and the title, click me. And how we would test that in Enzyme and in React.js library. So basically, Enzyme wants to check if the code works. So first line in the test, it's about shallowing the component. So shallow, and if you see React.js library, we use render. So the main difference between those two is the shallow gonna check only the parent of the component, while in the React.js library gonna check the parent and the children, which is the real life. When you look at the page in the website, you see everything. You see parents, children, everything, not just the parent. So this is more like unit, only that component, and the other one is more integrated. Then we have, when they're looking for the button, they find the CSS class, primary button. And there, in React.js library, we found by row button with that specific name, because it's what the users see. We also have here in the disable, when they want to check if they are disable or enable the button, they go for the prop as well to find if the prop disable is false, but you have the function there, enable. And the simulate, I don't know if you heard about Fire Event, probably yes. It's very similar to the simulate from Enzyme because it only check one event, which is the click. But the user event check all the events around the click, which is the mouse down, mouse up, hover, everything. So it's more user behavior. And the functionality itself, if the function was click, is the same. Okay, but why Enzyme become deprecated? So there was some technical reasons. It was built for the old React. So after React 16.8, we introduced some React hooks, which doesn't accept, the Enzyme was not accepting that. It was not understand what was going on. So that's why when you tried to migrate to 18, was breaking everything. And also Airbnb stopped to maintain. So all the communities start to work React.js library. React put in their documentation, they recommend to use React.js library for writing tests. So all the communities start to using it. And now I'm going to show you how was the roadmap for our migration. So we had first the plan, which was like a year migration. And we have, the plan, we need to secure it by end, the implementation, the knowledge transfer, enforcement, and automation. And so basically, I open my spreadsheet, and I think, I need to write down all the files that have Enzyme. So I went to my code base, I put my search bar Enzyme. And then it came like more than 100, I don't remember how many files now, but tests specifically, when I start to put like the quantity of tests in each file was more than 1,000 in the 3 services we had at the moment. Then I just realized, okay, we're not gonna finish by November, which was our deadline for migrate to React 18. And then, okay, now it's time to talk to someone. I ask people, I talk to my peers, I talk to my managers, my product manager as well, in a meeting, and said, okay, we have this amount of tests to migrate, and if you don't start now, we're not gonna be able to go to React 18 in the end of the year. So I showed the spreadsheet, and they were actually impressed, but of course, we don't want to delay the product delivery. So in my team, we work with milestones. So each milestone is a value we need to deliver. And then I said, okay, let's do one ticket per milestone, one ticket median, which will be like 2 to 3 days, to do all the tests we can for each milestone. It could be one test, because the tests are very complex, but could be 15, 20 tests. So, okay, my product manager was happy with that, because we didn't commit with the delivery for the product, and we didn't overwhelm the peers, so everyone was happy with this decision. And the implementation, basically, we start to do some migration. Let's take a test. Let's try to write something. Don't spend more than 3 days doing that. Okay, do you learn something new? Yes, we did. So write down, document what you learned, put in a Confluence page. We had a Confluence page that we shared, talk in a Slack, and populate the spreadsheet. If you don't want to learn anything, just populate the spreadsheet with who did that, how long it took. And this was how it looked like. This was actually a real screenshot, but we had more. Definitely just took a little bit. So we put in the minutes we spent doing this migration for each. We ended up with more than 100 hours, like if you think in a go. So it was a lot, but of course we need to spread in the whole year. And it's time to transfer the knowledge, because we realize we are learning things. So we are like, we didn't know much about React Test Library anyway. So we just realized, okay, there is some best practice to use actually. So let's do some internal documentation in our Confluence page about that. We also created a standard for testing in the company, and establishing guidelines, how to test, what to test. We also shared the knowledge, so talk to the team, talk to the whole company to be aligned, and scaling beyond the team, which is internal workshop about that. And then I did an external talk about this best practice as well, and Medium blogs. So the main things I really want to share as well here is about the best practices, because I think this is the main points of learning. So basically, use of the screen. So when we started, we didn't know much. So, and also, as I said, we had a Frankenstein code. So most of the codes were already doing that wrong stuff. Destructuring the render, like this get by role here, but we actually need to use the screen there. And because this is how the user they look at the screen, and then you have that. And the user event as well, when I told you about the simulate from Enzyme, is actually the same thing. Fire event, just fire one event, which is the click, while the user event fire all the events around the click as well, like a user would do. We also have user of meaningful assertions. So if you are testing a function, just don't do like to have been called. Yeah, it's gonna work, but okay, it was called with what and how many times? And not only that, but for instance, if you're testing a button, while you're checking if it's in the document, if it's better if you check if they are enabled or disabled. So the user wants to know if they can click that button. So check if they are enabled or disabled. And the text, the user wants to see if they are visible, for instance, and so on. So we also have priority of queries. So the priority of queries would be the queries that the user can see or the accessibility tools can see, which will be straight away, 100% they would do, which is row, label text, placeholder text, by text, and display value. The second one, they can see, but they need to do some effort, like hover. For instance, by title, get by title. If they use a hover, then they can see the title. And some accessibility tools doesn't pick up everything. So that's why the other one is most important. And the last one is the get by test ID, because no accessibility tool can see it and the user cannot see it as well. So let's use like first, second, and third. But of course, if you cannot do in the first or the second ones, you use the third one. And I left the user perspective over there because before you write the test, just think, okay, how the user would like to test this? How they would interact with my application, my components? If you think like that as a user, then you're gonna write a good test. But if you think as a developer, you're just gonna check your implementation. This is something we did in the last, enforcement and automation. I would recommend doing the beginning, but we did in the last because we didn't know, we were learning. So basically we have some S-link rules you can add to force people to write only what you want to write. And I recommend two plugins, the testing library and Jest DOM, and these two rules, which is the prefer screen query and prefer user event. So if you do, you have much more. That is like a lot. Nowadays I use, I don't know, maybe 15. But these two, I think, is the most important ones. And when you do like error, you're gonna see something like this. Red thingy say, okay, prefer using user event click over fire event click. And this is good because the developer can straight away make the change. They don't need to push their changes and ask someone else to review, and then they say, oh, can you please change that, blah, blah, blah. But why? Because this is what in the document. Anyway, so it's better if you just force them to do that beforehand. And yeah, the same with the get by text would be like screen get by. And yeah, also after when you do that, you have automatic enforcement, standard approach, and you actually force the best practices. So you also can, if they manage to do like force, dash force, you can block them in the CI/CD. So they're not gonna do that anyway. And here's some takeaways. So tech migration is as much about people as about code. So we need to talk to your peers. You need to be aligned with them. You need to talk to your product manager so they can accept you to do the migration while you're doing the product as well without problems in delivering. You can define the standards early. So yeah, because if you do later, you need to do the work again. But if you do earlier, you do all the standards beforehand. You don't need to redo your job. And celebrate milestones, because it's important. When you finish one service, let's celebrate. Let's go to a pub, whatever. But make the team engage. And always connect migration work with long-term business value, because at the end of the story, we work for companies. And this is how, the company wants to deliver some business and, value, like, yeah, you got it. Cool. Here I have some documentations, especially testing library. I have some different links for testing library. Also, Ken Dodds, which was the creator of this React test library. So this is a Bible for me. And then MDN as well. This smelly thing. And thank you. Yeah. So if you want to get in touch and talk more about that, I'll be more than happy to help. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, any questions?
Thank you. Thank you very much for the talk, and I really appreciated the bit about celebrating the milestones as long as you go along. I don't see teams doing that enough, and I think it's really important. Did you find when migrating these components and applications over to these new tests that the components were like accessible enough that to the testing library just worked, or did you find yourself also improving the components along the way?
Yeah, we are definitely improving some components, especially for accessibility as well. Yeah, so the main thing is like we didn't know. In the beginning, we were trying to just translate one library to another, but after we understand actually how it works, like how we just ignore Enzyme and we just try, okay, let's only test the component that's already done. So it was different because now we have to test everything and improving everything. So we are not actually take all the pieces from the Enzyme, but we are doing new things.
Did you change how any of the tests worked as a result of the migration?
Yes, the main one was about forms because we are using a library called Formic. And this Formic just, so basically Enzyme just check the parent. So it doesn't go through so they send some values to the submit button. But when we just convert from React.js library, we couldn't get that information. So we actually need to change everything. Yeah, especially the forms.
Thank you. Am I right in saying you recorded the time spent on each test, kind of doing the migration? Was that what the time value was? I was just wondering if so, I can kind of guess, but what was the reason for doing that?
Yeah, we didn't record like a proper recording, but we are checking when we start and when we finish. This is for accountability to show our product manager we are on track. And because she was expecting us to deliver in November, and let's say we were in July. Okay, so where are you at this moment? We actually finished 20% of tests. We finished, I don't know, 50%. And this was good because she actually was showing in some of her template, slides from to the her stakeholders to tell, because every month they need to give some updates on what we are doing, and she always put there like, okay, the team is 15% done with the Enzyme test. So it's pure about accountability.
Thanks so much for the talk. I've got a question about priority of queries, one of the slides that you had over there. And I was wondering if you've got, like, say, an application where you need to handle localization, we say something like IT Next, for example, because this is like something that we have at work, for example. And you had the list of priorities, like on like the top bit was get by text. And then the third one was get by test ID. In my mind, when you've got localization in place, you would rather like use get by test ID rather than get by text, because text can vary based on your like locales. So how would you handle that? Because it would be the same behavior that you're testing, if it makes sense, but the text may vary. So would you write 4 separate tests, or how would you handle this sort of case scenario?
Yeah, I think I would do both. Especially because the text would be the recommendation for the docs, the documentation anyway. So I would do that. But if you really still need to show the test ID, I would put there as well.
But wouldn't it be the duplication of the tests or the duplication of the code, because you're testing essentially the same thing? The text may vary again, but the functionality stays the same. Maybe I'm thinking a bit of a developer, like rather than the person who's actually using the application.
Yeah, Okay. Go.
So we use the same library and we use React testing library. So what we do in the test, we mock the response. So let's say you have a book now button, and right, you've got that in English and you've got that in Spanish, and you've got that. So you'll have a tiny little example extract of the localization in the test. So it's separate to the whole application. So if product or whoever, like anybody else, changes the top level one, that's not the point. It's got it in the test. So then you can check that. You can set the locale to like Spanish, and you can check the Spanish translation there using the get by role, and then like that way. So that's one way where it's completely mocked out. So it's separate to your app, so it's a unit test. Yeah, I can show you a thing if you want later.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's what I thought as well.
We have room for one more question.
This is a real use case from one of the recent projects that I worked with. So we were using ESLint and a lot of different code checkers like SonarQube and other things. One of the most common issues that we have been getting is like get by test ID keeps duplicating because React is like, it is going to be a component based one and keeps giving a lot of duplications. Is it okay to have duplications in get by test ID? And if it is not okay, what is the best way to handle this? It actually fails our CI/CD pipeline sometimes.
So you're saying you have duplicates when you run your lint, but you actually have just one.
Yeah, I mean, like for example, if you take a table, the rows, you have one single component which has product data test ID button, and when it renders, there will be like 100 rows that gets rendered. There will be 100 data test ID the same thing.
But because you render a lot of rows, so you need maybe index, I would say, for each row, like you do like 1, 2, 3.
It will be a problem in that case. What if we are trying to unit test that particular component for that particular row? It will fail.
But what if you do like a get all by test ID, and then you do like a 1, 2, 3, like. Yeah, that's an interesting question. To be fair, I'm not entirely sure. Yeah.
Cool. One more question for me was because you also did a migration. Which challenges did you have, or what didn't you expect when you started migration?
Yeah, so I didn't expect to have so many issues in the forms, the formix, because I'm trying. In the beginning, I thought was just translation between one library to another. So just take that line and translate, but actually the behavior of the test from Enzyme was completely different than the React test library. So I think we just have to think like it's a new word that we need to explore and then create tests, and not take one old one and try to convert to the new one.
Cool, thank you. Well, if there isn't any more questions, Tay, thank you very much. It was a really nice talk.
Thank you.
Okay, in the meantime, let's move with Millisande to things I've learned from PR comments and things I didn't when moving from a big agency to a startup.
We're good. Let me just check I can flick. Oh, look at that. You didn't need to see the title anyway. You got told what the title was already. So yes, I'm talking through my experience of moving from a big agency to a small startup. And these are some of my key learnings that I hope I can impart on you. So if you're ever doing the same move, you're not going to make or take as long to make the same mistakes that I have. So some of you might actually be in a similar position to me, because if you look at the number of job postings, if you compare 2022 to today, there's been a massive drop off in the number of open software developer roles. So probably a few of you who might have otherwise been moving from startup to startup might be considering a different move, and vice versa. So little bit about my story. So I spent 8 years at Big Blue, or IBM, which is a very large global company, and I was working in their consulting wing, and I was working in their kind of startup energy part of their consulting wing called IX. So it's all about interactive design. And I was there for 8 years. I did a number of projects. I normally did a project or I changed role about once a year. So I've been through BA, developer, senior developer, engineering manager, tech lead, and architect roles all throughout that time. So it always felt fairly fresh. But after 8 years, I thought I'd like to see how other people do stuff. And I also wanted to focus a little bit more on the social element of work, which felt a little bit lacking. It was quite hybrid or remote first at IBM. So for that reason, I decided to jump ship. And a year ago, I joined a company called Health Tech One. Their main mission is to change the NHS for the better, not the worst. And it is very... It's obviously got a good social good message, which I really appreciated, and it's much more in person. So I'm in the office about 4 days a week. We cook lunch for each other. We go on socials together. So that's all the girls in the office going to the V&A East because we're based in Stratford. So nice local stuff. And when I made the move, I was quite blasé about the experience of going from big tech to a startup. And part of that was because we had a very similar tech stack. So this is one of our products. This is Bookable. It's a way for people to find GP surgeries near them and to book in and get an appointment at the same time as registering. And this is a Next.js app. It's hosted on Vercel, and then it's got a big backend server written in Node.js. It's all TypeScript, both the front and the backend stack. And yeah, Kubernetes clusters, kind of stuff I've been working with for years. So I was like, oh, I'll go. It's going to be fine. I turned up. People were like, oh, how are you finding it? Must be really weird. And I was like, no, I'm doing sprint ceremonies and I'm doing a sprint and I'm writing tickets and I'm doing pull requests. Like, I don't understand why everyone's being really weird about this. Little did I know that actually things were quite weird. This is me plotting all of my pull requests that I have made since I started in January. And it's very weird for me to look at my first pull request and be like, there were 100 code comments, like PR comments. This isn't discussion. This is just about my PR. And this was going from a world where I was the big dog and I was getting maybe 1 or 2 comments on my PRs. So this was quite an extreme change. I was really hoping that what you would see would be the number of comments going down. So I attempted to normalize it for the difficulty of the work I was doing. Nope, still lots of comments. And if you break down those code comments, some of them were very legitimate code improvements, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to move. I wanted to see a different world and get different perspectives. So one of the cool things I also extended my knowledge of today because I went and researched for this presentation. Why are we doing it like this? It's much more performant for React Renderer to be returning null because it's not actually building that fragment. So this is another one that I've really appreciated, improving my code quality. So for a long time, I was quite lazy and I would just say mock reg 1, mock reg 2, mock reg 3. And I got pulled up for it, and now I am consistently now providing much clearer variable naming. But there was some stuff that was maybe a little bit more permissive. I don't know the word for it, but subtle, that's the word. That it took me a long time to realize. This is probably one of the first things that I realized. There was quite a few little console logs that I dropped in there. Whoops-a-daisy. And we do a 360-degree feedback every 2 months, which is extreme. Potentially some of my emotional rollercoaster might have been to do with that. But I got pulled up for it, and I realized when I went in for my second 360-degree feedback that I should give myself a little bit of a break about how this particularly embarrassing piece of feedback, because I was used to working in a world where you go through unit tests, then you go through static code analysis, then you go through dynamic code analysis, then you go through UAT, then you go through integration testing, then maybe you do a little bit of smoke testing, and then it goes live. So whenever I was reviewing code in my previous job, and likewise when people were reviewing me, sometimes you look at that code and you go, I think that's probably all right, and you let it go. But in this place, when I get a piece of code reviewed, if I press merge, that's in production in half an hour, which, you know, you kind of have to be a little bit more careful with what you're doing. So that's one thing I learned. This one is the one that probably took me the longest to realize. I probably only picked this up about a month ago, which is crazy because one of our values at Health Tech One is that you are a product owner. Like, that is one of the values. You are an owner as well. So it's surprising that it took me probably 9 months to realize that I was misunderstanding that value. I understood being an owner to mean when you get given a ticket, you work on it until you reach completion, and you're responsible for making sure that ticket gets done. When actually, the way that they mean it is you're an owner of the whole product, of the whole company. So you are the one who is just as valuable at making a product decision as the product owner that I kept going to, being like, well, what's the priority? Should we do this or should we do that? And I was getting really a lot of these comments on my PRs. So again, I should have realized that saying, I know it's not in your scope, but what you should do while you're changing this is also fix these 5 issues. And actually, I wasn't willing to hear that. This is an example of one of my pull requests. You can see all of the comments that I've received from one reviewer. And you can see I did fix some of them, but many of them I actually sent a rather passive-aggressive comment. I copied and pasted this as well on all of these. I really like these improvement ideas, but I think that you should F off. No, I didn't say that, but I did say basically the same thing, and I was thinking that. I was like, why are you getting in the way of me getting this thing done? And it was about this point that I was starting to feel really, really, really rubbish. I was like, I don't understand why the way that I'm seeing the world isn't being shared by other people. And I feel like I'm constantly being negged about those opinions. And about the same time, I was given, well, in my first 360-degree feedback, I was given some feedback that I didn't like to see. I now trust the people that give me this feedback a lot more. But at the time, I read that first piece of feedback and I was like, oh God, they've caught me. I don't know how to code and they're right. And then I also read the second piece of feedback from a different person. And I read that as, oh, okay, so senior developers, they go and read the whole code base and then they understand it. Okay, well, I better do that and I can't ask any questions. I felt quite isolated and I really, really struggled. And I reached a real low ebb and I actually was on a Monday looking at jobs. And I was like, I'm gonna apply for this job tomorrow because I don't want to work here anymore. And that's the day that one of my colleagues ran a team building exercise. And we got to lay out all of the things that make us tick and the things that we value and the things that we struggle with. And I realized when we plotted out on the graph that I was very different from everybody else at this company. And they said, we're so glad you're here because you think about things differently to us. And you're making the product better by your diverse thinking. So I want you, if you're ever in the same position, to be brave and to say what you think, because it's still really valuable. It's always going to be valuable. Even if you think that what you're saying is really dumb, it's still going to be valuable because people can then respond to that and think clearer about their own opinions. Which brings me to a similar point, which I think is, I talked about how I wanted to leave my big tech. I wanted to do something that was socially good. And I think part of that was because I was getting frustrated with being at big tech and constantly building something that then got thrown away or priorities changed or politics changed. And I wanted to feel like the work that I was doing was making a difference. And that's why I picked Health Tech One. But what I actually found when I got to the startup was stuff gets thrown away even faster. And I was talking to my colleagues, and I think this is another benefit of having moved, as I have had the opportunity to see really different perspectives. And my colleague Isabel said that she likes that her work gets overpicked and rewritten, because she says, and she makes clothes in her spare time. So she bought an analogy from textiles. She was like, it's like the family quilt. You know, it's going to be in the family for hundreds of years, and it's going to be stitched over, and it's going to be patched, but you still built that quilt. You are still part of that quilt. And if it wasn't being stitched, it wasn't being patched over, the quilt would be thrown away, and that's much worse. So believe in your worth and that you are building that quilt for the generations to come. So these are the takeaways. So if you're ever doing the same thing, I hope you will do all these 4 things. And thank you for listening.
Thank you. Questions?
Thank you so much for that. I think we've all been there where we've seen like, I don't know, like 10 or 20 or 100 like PR comments, and it doesn't feel great. Like it feels overwhelming. And you're right that like perspective change is important, but I also wonder if there's better ways to give feedback as opposed to, you know, bombarding someone with, you know, hundreds of comments, because ultimately none of us really like that. And I think there should be better ways to communicate that. I wonder if that's something you've discussed amongst your colleagues.
Yeah, for sure. I think there was a point about 3 months in where I said, I can't take all of this constructive feedback, and I would like you to point out in comments the parts that you like, because I can't cope with all of this. So that was a big positive. I think a lot of the problems early on were also like a lack of trust. I didn't really trust the people that I worked with, because it was, you know, they're strangers. I've only just started working with them. And when I saw those comments, I misunderstood, and I thought they were disrespecting me, or they were like thinking I was a bad developer, when that wasn't the case at all. And I think now that I know the people, I feel a lot more positive about the comments that I'm getting, and I don't mind the quantity. In fact, I really appreciate it because it is making me better. But I think the real thing is the trust. And an example, like I worked with a colleague for the first time about 6 weeks ago, and he also gave me some really difficult to read comments, and I was like, okay, it's just because we've never worked together and I don't trust him, I'm sure, and he doesn't really know me either. So with trust, I think it all gets a lot better.
Yeah, I do sometimes think like it's a two-way street though. Like I think, you know, a lot of the time we're adapting to like, you know, people's feedback, but I think, you know, it's a two-way thing. Like we should also be like very perceptive of how we're communicating with other people. And I don't know if like that's something we need to embrace more as a community, instead of, okay, this is my feedback. I think there needs to be like more thought behind that.
I think that's a really good point. And I think that there are very different styles, and I was very early on saying like, this is the way I like to receive feedback. And so I totally agree. And I think that the differences between us and the way I give feedback to how other people give feedback is a real like positive. And like they all say like, Millie, you give really good feedback, and like I'm like, yes, thank you, but you're right, I could do more to be like, we should all be getting better at giving feedback. We should all be at that level.
Thank you so much.
I have a follow-up answer for this. So when I started initially in a couple of projects, I had 300 number of pull request comments. One way, the recent times I have been getting only like 10 or 12. So what I did was shadowing with the other developers. See, you're always right, but even the other person is right. It is just that how you think versus the other person thinks. Another thing is, yeah, I know it is like public and it's kind of like a public shaming, but what you can do is after the stand-up is over, hey, I have a few questions. Would you like to pull up on a 5-minute call, video call, share your screen? So if this is okay to go ahead with a PR, or should I do any changes? Is it as per like your standards? And another thing is like look through the previous merged code, and then see if you are able to follow the same kind of a thing. Just wanted to add to this because I face the same thing. I don't want anyone else to face it as well. Okay, cool.
not a question, but I just want to say thank you so much for sharing your learnings. And I think it's hugely brave to share critical 360 feedback that is kind of hit straight in the gut. As you were sharing that, I previously worked in a health tech startup, a small startup, and I can very much relate to the roller coaster of having regular reviews and somebody, particularly particularly when the feedback is somebody further away from you than your everyday folks. So I wanted to just say thank you. That takes a lot to share something like that in a public forum. So well done.
I wanted to ask, you kind of touched a little bit on it, but I wanted to ask, how has this impacted the way that you give feedback to other new people that join the organization? Has that kind of like changed the way? You mentioned that you were quite positive, but are you kind of more conscious about the way that you give feedback now to make sure that other people don't feel like how you felt?
It's a good question, and a good challenge. I think so far I've always been very conscious about the way I give feedback. So actually the way that I give feedback to other people hasn't changed that much from here. I think what has changed is my awareness that not everybody is as coached in giving feedback. I think a lot of my prior experience of being at a big tech company, we give feedback in a really different way. And I hadn't, until really this question, really thought I should be bringing that learning to the company.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking, 100 comments, that's, comment a minute is 2 hours,
Yeah. Oh, that is 100% the case. And I have already given feedback about the fact that there is no contributing guidelines. It's just learn as you do it. That's a startup for you. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you very much it was very insightful. Okay, cool. Before we go, let's see if I can click on this video. No, we can. Oh, sorry. So yeah, what I've just seen was like the previous editions of ReactJS Girls. So thank you very much for coming in. Thank you BNY for sponsoring this event. It was really good, and sharing this amazing space with the community. Thanks YLD, Christine. You're the best for organizing all of this event and putting so much effort in putting so much effort into making it happen. Thank you to our speakers, Roxana, Sophie, Tay, and Millisande for your insightful talks and elaborating your topics, doing Q&A session. You had really tricky questions and good ones, so kudos for you. And finally, all the audience, thank you very much for attending, showing up, and spending part of your evening with us. And yeah, before you go, there's a QR code over there. So if you can, vote for the best event. I'm just going to leave the QR code so you can vote. And by the way, we are always looking for new talents. I'm going to focus on the JavaScript ones because this meetup is about React since it's about JavaScript. So yeah, if you are interested, just drop by our page and see if there's something exciting for you. Yeah, we do have other roles, but we have a few ones in JavaScript. So yeah, feel free to apply and don't exit it to out. And yeah, thank you for joining and see you at the pub, the shop bookseller. Christine, you handle this, right? And less comments on pull requests, please. I've been there too. Cool. Thank you.